Many of you feel that since I teach English, it must have been very easy for me to learn it. Today I'm going to share with you that however difficult you find it to learn English, it is possible to learn as I have learnt passing through so many difficulties. By sharing my own experience, I would like to motivate you, because just now I saw a comment which says that if you have studied in Hindi or any other language medium in school, then you cannot learn English. That's not true at all. You can learn any language. I know people who started learning languages like Urdu, where the script also is quite difficult and the language is totally different. They started learning when they were in their 70s, because people say that by learning languages, our mind becomes better. It becomes sharper and clearer. So at a young age, even if you're 20, 30, 40, you want to learn a language, it is possible. But you need to do hard work. Without hard work, it is not possible. If you just don't put in an effort, energy, time, you will not be able to learn. So here is the story I wanted to share with you. These are the real incidents of my life. In my preschool days, preschool is when I didn't start going to school at the age of 4. So this was before I was 4 years old. There were many languages around. One, the language which was spoken at home, my own mother tongue. Then, the local language, when I made friends with children of my own age in the locality, they would speak their own language and I would speak my own language. In this way, we started communicating, and soon each of us could understand a little of the other's language. Some Telugu, some Marathi, some Hindi, some Urdu. All these we were exposed to, in addition to my mother tongue, Bengali, which was only spoken at home. Outside there was nothing. So as children, when we were playing, 3 years old, etc., 3.5, we were speaking all these languages. It was confusing, no doubt. We didn't know any language perfectly. We used to have a mixture of languages. Some words we would get only in the other language. Then at home we were told that try to speak your mother tongue correctly. Don't mix other languages in it. In this way, by the time we were 3.5 years old, we knew that there was a variety of languages and it could be learnt easily by listening and speaking. Once, when I started going to school, it was an English medium school, so all the studies were in English. We had all the books in English. But in the first school which I attended, there was not much of a chance to speak, because everybody was speaking the local language and nobody insisted that we should speak in English. So we knew how to read English, we knew how to write English because exams were in English, and reading and writing English did not help us to speak English. We listened to the teachers explaining everything in English, so we could understand when we listened. But nobody told us that we had to speak. That was most important. Suddenly, I had to change schools because my father got transferred. And the school which I went to, did not allow anybody to speak a word of any other language except English. So you can imagine, suddenly from one day to the next day, only English. I was a very friendly and talkative person in the earlier school. I was a leader in everything. I was my class leader. Here, when I came to this new school, wonderful school, but the problem was I couldn't speak fluent English as girls of my age in my class could speak. So suddenly I became totally silent. I would just observe everybody, smile at everybody, share my lunch with everybody, but not speak because I didn't know how to be fluent. This is the problem many of you might face. It is only because even though you know the language, you have used the language for some years, you have never spoken the language. So I knew I was getting very good marks in English. There was no problem with English. The problem was with the skill of speaking. But young children learn very fast because they don't feel shy of making mistakes. Even if you make mistakes and somebody laughs at you, the child doesn't mind. For children, that is why it's much better. They are not self-conscious. But as we grow up, we become very sensitive. We think that nobody should laugh at us, nobody should correct us, nobody should say anything. Therefore, we want to be perfect from the first day. That's not possible. Little by little, sentence by sentence, with a lot of laughter and fun, and sometimes enmity with friends who said, "Your English is so bad." But then they saw in the exams I was getting good marks. In speaking, I couldn't. The teachers realized, we had small groups of students in each class, 20, 25. The teachers were so wonderful that they realized that the problem was speaking for me. Therefore, they gave many exercises to do. In the class, every day somebody had to read loudly in the English class. They had to read at least for 5 minutes. In this way, 20 days, you would get one chance. Again, after 20 days, again you would get a second chance. Throughout the year, reading loudly in the class in front of 20 girls who are sitting there and correcting your mistakes by saying, "Oh, this word you did not say correctly," because everybody had the same book. And as I read, they would keep saying. But the teacher was very encouraging. And she would say, "Don't worry about making mistakes," which I tell you all the time. Every one of us makes mistakes. So sometimes you skip a word. You forget to say that word. And you read the whole sentence without that word. Because there is nervousness. Second, instead of reading 2, you read 4. You are seeing it correctly, but you are not reading it correctly. That is because you are doing it for the first time. So in this way, reading in a class every 20 days once, I did it for about 6 months, I could read fluently because at home I would stand on the terrace and read the book loudly every day. I would not wait for 20 days. I would read it because I had the desire that next time when I read, I should not make a mistake. Still, it took me 6 months before I could read very well. Then, reading helps in speaking because you are using your voice mechanism, starting from the lungs to the windpipe from which the air comes out, your mouth, your nose, tongue, teeth, lips, palate, all these we use while reading. And reading loudly you can hear also. It is close to speaking. Since we read from books, we started speaking a formal language. Everybody in school would speak a formal language. Then by the time I came to the 8th class, they said, you have to read one book per week in English and you have to tell us the story of that book in the class. No help, no reading. You have to speak. It was so tough. We started with small books. These are called abridged classics. Later in my life, I wrote 10 or 12 abridged classics for a very famous publisher. Of course, that was very, very long back. Many of them were prescribed in schools and colleges. Some of them were prescribed outside India also. But that came later. So here was the experience in my 8th class that I had to read a book and then speak in the class. I found that not only I, but many of the girls who could speak fluently still struggled to make this presentation on a book. So I felt a little confident that, okay, I'm not alone. In reading, I was alone. Everybody was making fun of me. But in speaking, I was not alone. There were half the girls in the class who found it difficult to read the book and tell the story which is there in the book. That is why I'm giving you so many stories on this channel for you to improve. Then this became also, a part of our curriculum where every time, again, once in 20 days, a girl had to speak. So once in 3 weeks, we would get a chance to speak about a book we had read. But we had to read one book per week. The library teacher would check up whether we are borrowing the book from the library, reading it and returning it. Sometimes we had to write also. Then we read bigger books like The Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. It is, hundreds of pages. And it is a book which I taught when I was teaching MA in the university. And many students at MA level said, we have not read this book before. Then I remembered, look at my teachers, look at the curriculum, where in 8th class I read the original book written by Jane Austen, which is called Pride and Prejudice, a great classic in literature. Very interesting book. How rich men, who are looking for brides, they find them in a village, in a poor family. How one sister gets only a very bad husband. The elder 2 sisters get really good husbands. That Pride and Prejudice, that is the story. Then we also had another problem, and that is English was so important that if you failed in English, then you would get an F grade. F grade means fail grade. If you failed in any other subject, they would count the total and according to your percentage, they would grade you as A, B, C, so on. If you were indisciplined, then also you might get an F grade. So although I could write the exam very well, once I forgot to do the corrections. When you get back the answer sheet, the teacher would make us do the corrections. All mistakes what we made, we had to write it 10 times. In this way, we would never make that mistake again. Once I forgot. And because I forgot, I got 0 in that test and I got an F grade. My teacher, class teacher who taught us chemistry, she started crying when she gave the report. She says, Sumita, I can't expect any grade other than A from you. How could you get an F grade? That was the day I started concentrating with great discipline on all subjects, including English. I didn't say English was not important. Let me do sciences. That is important. That day I realized that to learn good English, we should correct our own mistakes. That is why I tell you that the third stage is when you correct your mistakes. In all our curriculum in school, we never learnt formal grammar. You must remember that for 12 years, I never went to plus 2. For 12 years, our exam was 11th. Then we had 6 months off and then college, straight into graduation. In all those years, I never studied what is a noun, what is a verb, what is an adjective, no grammar. But our grammar was perfect from the texts which we read, from the exercises we did. Listening, speaking, reading, writing, good English gave us all the grammar we needed without the rules of grammar. This is natural learning which we did. When I came to college, we had courses of grammar. There, for the first time, I started learning that what I knew as English also has rules. We have to follow those rules. I never used to make mistake in the tests of grammar, so my English teacher was very fond of me in college. And then I appeared for the entrance exam for MA English with reluctance. I didn't want to do English. I said, no, I will do something else for my post-graduation. Then my brother and my aunt, they caught hold of me and took me to write the exam. They said, your English is very good. You will get lot of benefit if you do English. I went there. I found that most of it was things I didn't know. But one thing I knew was the first question. They said, write an essay on your favorite poem. So I thought of my hundreds of poems we learnt when we were in school. You know, I used to take part in recitation competitions when I was in the kindergarten classes, in the first class, second class. I would nicely go and recite because recitation was not a problem. Speaking was a problem. Learning and reciting, I used to get prizes in those first, second classes in recitation always. So I remembered many poems. I wrote it. And on the strength of that one question which I did very well, I got a seat. Then, of course, I could do MA, MPhil, PhD, and I could get into the university as a teacher, all because of the foundation of English which I got when I was a student. We started by writing and reading. We didn't start with speaking, but slowly, with a lot of struggle, I started speaking and I would come home and practice speaking. I have younger brother and sister to whom I would speak, and when there was nobody, I would go to the terrace and speak to myself. I would pretend as though I was my own friend. Then I would say, hello, how are you today? The friend would reply, hi, I'm not well today. In this way, the conversation would continue. It was like a game for a small girl who, wanted to practice speaking. So apart from school, teachers, friends, there were many friends who were helping. We would sit at home and then practice our English, practice speaking with friends. When there were no friends, there were members of the family who might not have known much English, but they would listen and they would help. They would give a lot of suggestions. Here you are stopping. Here you are hesitating. This word you're not able to say without thinking for a minute. In this way, improvement came. And finally, I'm in front of you, thousands of you say that you are learning English, I feel happy because I'm still learning. I can't say that I have finished learning English. I'm learning, and I'm learning along with you, because many of your comments when you ask for a video, like today somebody has asked for compound adjectives. When I prepare that video, I have to think of those things which are there. Many of you ask for literature videos. I'm not teaching literature for the past 8 years. I used to in my classes before I retired. Therefore, I have to think of that. Okay, what am I going to do in this literature class? In this way, my improvement continues along with yours. So I feel very happy to be with all of you, to help you learn English without fear, enjoying the language, because encouragement is there from every side. Please remember that my job is mainly to encourage you. And if you feel inspired, motivated, encouraged, then learn more and more, and remember that you can become like me, better than me, if you do all what I had to do in my life. Thank you and all the best.